lawyer to appoint me as a judge pro tem. And that's an honor that I revered, and that's an honor that I thought highly of. One of the responsibilities of a judge, an elected judge, is to be as unguarded, not to cause a splash as possible, because you're merely supposed to be a referee. As a judge pro tem, you owe it not only to the citizens of New Orleans, but you owe it to the 7 justices on the Supreme Court to not be gaudy, to not cause a splash when you assume the bench. The circumstances of the last week have made it nearly impossible for me to assume that position without causing a splash and without causing a stir. And I think too much of the Louisiana Supreme Court to do such. Additionally, I have had other clients reach out to me and express reservations about me not being able to assist them in their matters as they come up for trial and preliminary hearings. They have expressed vehemently that they want me to be there with them, fighting for them in court, and I intend to do so. So that being said, after consultations with dear friends, after prayer, after talking to my mama, I've made the decision to withdraw from the appointment of Judge Pro Tem and continue representing all my clients, Mr. Hayes and others. I'll take any questions you have.
What is your response to the press conference earlier today by Mr. Smith's family lawyer? He was very aggressive, and he had a lot to say about your client, and pretty much labeled him the aggressor in all of this.
Well, the rules of professional conduct prohibit lawyers from speaking ill about other lawyers, but I'll say this. There are some things that I heard that I questioned. One of the glaring things I heard that I questioned is the assertion, if you will, that no accident occurred. However, his client saw no damage to my client's vehicle. The question I have is, if there was no accident, why are you looking for damage to my client's vehicle? Anybody else?
John, so the coroner's report showed 8 bullet wounds suffered by Will Smith. How does that match your position that your client was not the aggressor?
Well, I'll say now, Mike, as I've always said, that Cardell Hayes was not the aggressor. And during the course of the preliminary hearing and the trial, that will become readily apparent. As far as the 8 shots that Mr. Smith sustained, I will say again that Mr. Hayes was legally not guilty.
The Smith family attorney today said that the gun was in a compartment inside the vehicle. If this is true, why would Cardell Hayes feel threatened on the scene if he never saw a gun?
Yeah. If you remember at the initial press conference, the Sunday that my client went for a bail hearing, I talked to y'all, and I also talked to you the following Monday. And one of the things that I suggested and I intimated, based on information that I had, was that there was a gun in Mr. Smith's car. Now let me ask you this. How would my client know that to tell me that if someone didn't brandish that firearm?
Can you comment any more on what, if anything, Mr. Smith said to your client during this altercation?
All of that would become apparent.
Mr. Kohler, why do you think it took more than 2 days for the police to find that gun inside the car?
Yeah, well, if you remember, one of the initial reports during one of the initial press conferences was that actually only one gun was confiscated, right? And I find it odd that on yesterday, after I communicated with one of the lead detectives on the case and expressed reservations about possible untoward activity by former NOPD officers, that all of a sudden now we have 3 guns there. Now I have a theory, and it's a good theory, and it's a true theory based on witnesses that I've talked to as to why it was initially reported that only one gun was recovered. However, it would be inappropriate for me to mention it at this time because my witness fears for her life.
Do you believe there was a cover-up?
I cannot state what my witness told me she witnessed on that night right now because she fears for her life.
Was your witness a bystander?
Yes. She arrived on the scene, let's say seconds or minutes after the shooting.
Who is she afraid of?
Specifically, I'd rather not mention it, but you can kind of use it on the judge.
So John, are
You
you
had
saying?
mentioned some former detectives or former police. Have they been trying to influence, do you feel, this investigation? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, I'm only saying that my witness, one of my witnesses, witnessed some very untoward activity on that night. I will not reveal her name. I will not reveal specifics as to what she told me she saw. And I'll leave it at that.
How many
John,
witnesses do you have?
At least 4.
Is one of them the?
And all of them have been very, very consistent.
So
Go
John,
ahead, Mike.
did your client see a gun being brandished by Will Smith or someone from his party?
Mike, the only way I can answer is this. I told y'all on Monday that there was another gun available. How would I, and obviously I've talked to my client and other witnesses, how would I know that there was another gun available and present within another car if someone did not see that gun?
What happened to the gun?
What if he had said, I'm going to get my gun? Because one of the witnesses on the scene, according to cell phone video, said that there was an exchange that he said he was going to get the gun, but he may not have brandished it. Is that a possibility?
I agree that that occurred also.
So what happened to the gun that your client saw?
Well, I never said, that's the question. When you say what happened to it,
You're saying there was a reason for you to state earlier that there was a gun. So what are you saying happened to that gun? Police said they found no gun except the one in a compartment in Will Smith's car.
that would become apparent through the preliminary hearing. Because you're getting back to what I said about the witness that I had. Saw untoward activity and has become fearful and communicated with me this morning that she does not want to testify publicly. But she will make her statement, she will record a statement and give a written statement about what she did.
Did your client,
Extremely critical.
did your client or any of the witnesses actually see the gun?
Witnesses saw the gun, yes.
Witnesses saw Mr. Smith's gun, just to make sure.
Yes.
She became afraid this morning, or she been afraid all along?
Well, she had been participating. I talked to her Sunday. I talked to her last night, and earlier this morning she expressed to me reservations in terms of testifying. Obviously, because this has become a big case, she expressed to me reservations about testifying, and she expressed fear. Right? She didn't specifically say who she feared. But you know, you have a lot of parties involved in this outside of Mr. Hayes. And look, I'm not suggesting that Mr. Smith's family in no way is who she was referring to. But she said that she had fear, and as a defense attorney, I have to respect her wishes. Nevertheless, she said that she would agree to give me one last statement so that the investigator would mention that statement and repeat that statement on the preliminary hearing.
Your client said why he shot Mrs. Smith?
My client is not guilty legally, and I've never said my client shot Mr. Smith. Never.
So how was she wounded?
I'm sorry?
How was she wounded?
My client is legally not guilty.
Well,
John,
John,
you
you said
said-
you wanted to test all ballistics from all of the guns on the scene that night. But police told us that the gun found in Will Smith's car was fully loaded, as was the other gun in Hayes' passenger gun. So how could she have been shot if there are no other guns that were fired that night? Or was there another gun that was fired?
Well, my client is legally not guilty, and the ballistic evidence in this case will still be extremely important, especially in light of some of the comments that were made by the lawyer earlier today.
John, you said
45 caliber wounds in the legs of Mrs. Smith?
I'm referencing nearly everything he said as regards to that.
John, you said witnesses saw the gun in Will Smith's possession,
At least one, yes.
and did your client? Does that include your client? Did he see it in Will Smith's possession?
We'll learn that later.
There was a 45 that was confiscated, and then the police said that there was a revolver that was in Mr. Hayes' vehicle. Were either of those, both of those, Mr. Hayes'?
We'll learn more about that later as well.
John, do you believe the crime scene was tampered with?
I'd rather keep my thoughts as pertains to that to myself. But let me tell you this. I spoke to numerous witnesses, and they weren't just lay witnesses. I also talked to sources within the New Orleans Police Department. And I just find it odd that in a homicide where a man lost his life, a man who left 3 children behind, that a gun supposedly isn't recovered until days after the incident. And that it's initially reported that only 1 gun is recovered. That's odd. But in terms of the cover-up, I'm going to keep those thoughts to myself for right now and make it public in the future.
Are you concerned that a former NOPD officer, Billy Saravello, was on the scene that night? He was at the restaurant with Will Smith, present at the time of the accident. Is that what you're referring to?
I'll make my thoughts about that known in the future.
If you said this, I apologize, but is one of the witnesses, as a witness that was seen on the very widely circulated video saying that they heard who it sounds like was Will Smith say that he had a gun, has that person come forward? And
I haven't talked to that gentleman.
So John,
At his news conference today, the Smith family attorney says that Mr. Smith was not inebriated. He disagreed with that.
Well, Gabe, we're going to wait to hear the tox report, and we're going to wait to see the videotape from Soccer Cafe. And after we get the tox report, after we get the video from Soccer Cafe, we will all be able to make a determination about that. I have my own opinion based on speaking again with witnesses and based on what I've seen. But rather than me giving you my opinion, let's just wait for what I know to be confirmed.
so John, let's assume that
I didn't know his lawyer said that.
let's assume you're correct. That Will Smith's vehicle ran into Cardell Hayes' vehicle.
It did.
But we all saw the video. It was relatively minor.
I agree.
So why would Cardell Hayes then ram the back of his vehicle so hard that it knocked out the back windshield?
Well, Cardell Hayes pulled over, like most people do after they have accidents, in an effort to exchange information with the vehicle that struck his. The vehicle that struck his sped off. My client sped off in an effort to get information, in an effort to call the authorities to alert them as to the accident. Unfortunately, a 3-car pileup occurred as a result of it. And I think that's certainly unfortunate. But if you're asking just collision retaliatory, absolutely not.
But why did he hit the back of the Mercedes with such force that it caused the back windshield to blow out? Why was he hit so hard?
Well, I mean, traffic accidents can be hard sometimes, but that's just what it was. It was an accident, and it certainly was not retaliatory in any fashion. And that would be backed up by the witnesses on the scene who have given me plenty of information to support that my client is legally not guilty.
Do you have anything else back in the witness statement, such as video?
We have reason to believe that a bystander recorded the events immediately prior to gunshots being fired, and that footage was turned over to the NOPD on the night that Mr. Smith died. We want that video because I know what it's going to show, and it's going to show that my client is legally not guilty. But we have strong reason to believe, after talking to multiple witnesses, that the events immediately preceding the shooting were captured on cell phone footage, and that cell phone was turned over to the NOPD.
you agree Raquel Smith was shot first?
That is something that we will not know until we get a ballistic report. So I really have no comment on that.
Back to your comments about turning down the judgeship. You said you can't really be a judge by causing a stir, a splash. But you're the first attorney to come out and release so many details about this case. Why have you done that?
Are you asking about why did I get so many details?
Yes.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. This case is the ultimate example, the absolute ultimate example of a person being prejudged. Cardell Hayes was tried and convicted before I got out of church on Sunday. When I woke up Sunday morning, I heard that a former client had been arrested. And by the time I got out of church on Sunday, he had been convicted. He had been convicted in print. He had been convicted on television. He had been convicted on social media. And the facts that were portrayed is that there was a road rage incident, and because of that, Cardell Hayes committed cold-blooded murder. Now, on Sunday, when I talked to y'all, I told you who were there that there was a hit and run, which is a crime. My client followed behind the vehicle that hit him in an effort to get the license plate. There was a subsequent crash, and that my client was never the aggressor, and that my client, along with others out there who felt threatened. Over the past few days, what has come to light is what I told you all on Sunday and what I told you on Monday is true. And it was very important for me, as Mr. Hayes' lawyer, to get some truth out there. So that's why I shared some of those facts. Some of them, not all of them. And more to come.
Sir, this back and forth between you and the other attorney, I mean, that it's come to this, that this is where you are what, setting a line in the sand? You want to make sure that the record somehow be noted? I mean, what is it about the rest of it?
Well, let me say there's no back and forth with me and the other attorney. I'm assuming you're talking about the attorney that spoke earlier today. There's no back and forth. This press conference was really to announce me withdrawing from the judgeship. And I'm just willing to take questions because y'all were nice enough to wait for me.
Well, it's important to get your side out. Is that what
Absolutely. When you have a client whose case was initially basically open and shut, cut and dry, black and white, it's very important, and you owe it to that client to get some truth out there. There was a lot of falsity out there initially, and we're trying to get some truth out there, and we're going to get some more out there. And in terms of will there be continuing press conferences, no. I don't intend to try this case in the public. And the information that you have received or that I've given represents a small amount of what I actually know. Everything that I told y'all so far has added up.
John, do you think Mr. Hayes will be indicted prior to the hearing date?
That's a good question, Chick. Let me just say I wouldn't be surprised.
Do you have confidence in the DA's office and will handle this like any other case?
Yes.
Do you think he can get a fair trial in New Orleans given all the publicity?
Absolutely.
Does he have any chance of making bail, or is he going to be in jail until the trial?
Well, definitely we want to make an effort to get him out of jail. He has a 5-year-old child that he loves. He has a mom that misses him dearly. So one of our goals after we present the evidence, that some of the evidence at least that we have, is to request a bail reduction, if not from the magistrate judge, then from the judge that receives the case.
Prior to the first accident on Magazine, was there any interaction between your client and Mr. Smith that evening?
No, absolutely not. My client had no relationship with Mr. Smith, and this is something I agree with the other lawyer about. My client never worked for the Saints. There was no interaction early in that day, and my client did not even know that was Mr. Smith until a lawyer that visited him in jail early Sunday morning advised him.
Why did we seem to stop suddenly in the middle of the block?
Well, we all do when we're driving from time to time.
Stop suddenly in the middle of the street?
Yes, this is New Orleans. It's full of potholes, and you always have trash cans going on.
I didn't see it.
Was there traffic stopped at the red light above that? There's one angle that seems to suggest that there was traffic that stopped at a red light further up the street.
Well, I know for a fact that the car driven by my client and the car driven by Mr. Smith were not the only cars on Magazine.
Is any GPS in the Hummer?
I don't know.
John, the Will Smith family attorney said that after shooting 10 shots, your client continued toward Will Smith and stood over his body and continued yelling. How do you respond to that?
Well, that's completely inconsistent with the evidence that you all have. You have evidence of an eyewitness speaking about what he saw. That's completely inconsistent with that. And I'm hesitant to criticize other lawyers But let me say this. The same lawyer apparently said that no hit and run occurred on Magazine, but for some reason Will Smith attempted to confirm that there was no damage to my client's vehicle. Why are you trying to confirm that there is no damage to my client's vehicle if a hit and run didn't occur? So you got to remember that that's the source that you're getting all that information from. Yeah? All right, thank y'all. Hope I ain't keep y'all waiting too long.